Hey everybody, Brian again, and we've got a great install video. This series, if you've seen on my channel, I have 3 videos up. We are installing the full guard set from T-Rex Racing. So this portion of our series, we are going to install the front engine guards. So just a couple disclaimers for you. Number one, I am not a mechanic in any way, shape, or form. So if I do something wrong or say something wrong, hey, let me know in the comments. I'd love to interact with you. Also, if you need any technical service, make sure you check a service manual, or if you have any other questions you can't answer, talk to a mechanic. You're welcome to ask me, you're welcome to use Google and stuff, but I'm just a dad of 3 kids, guys. I enjoy the ride and I enjoy protecting my investment. So with that, you can hit the like if you like it, you can hit the subscribe if you want at the end. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But I want to invite you to join me now as I install the front engine guards from T-Rex Racing on my 2020 Yamaha FJR. Hey, before we get to the motorcycle, I want to show you the tools needed. This kit does have a lot of different sizes of fittings and pieces. So if I don't cover everything here, I'll make sure to talk about it when I build. But I do want to let you know a few different things. The first, this large bolt right here, this is one of the ones that's going to be a main support for the engine guards. This is a very large Allen wrench in it, and this is my biggest Allen wrench. It happens to be a 10 millimeter, and that is what seems to go in there. Now, because of the size of this, I'm not going to be able to get a lot of leverage. So a trick for you, if you've never done this before, if you put an Allen wrench in this way, if you need the length, now you've only got that short stub. If you match an Allen wrench's size to a regular or standard deep socket, depending on the size of the Allen wrench, it will fit in there tightly. And now you can put your wrench or an extension to give yourself a little bit more force. Now, obviously you don't want to use this when you're tightening because you want to get to specific torques that you needed for different pieces and stuff, but this definitely helps when you're breaking things loose if need be. So that is something that you will need as well. You need that Allen wrench and a large size of that. Also, the large bolt that's going to go right through the entire bike, and we'll talk about that one in a minute, is sized at a 17 millimeter socket. So there's our 17, and I've used a long extension for that because it is pretty deep under the bike. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And then a few of the smaller bolts also on the bike for taking off are this smaller socket, and I believe, yep, it is a 14 millimeter. So 14 millimeter, again with an extension, 17 millimeter, your appropriate socket wrench, 10 millimeter Allen, an extension for that if you want to use it to cheat a little bit there, and of course, medium strength Loctite. When you put everything back together, they recommend it in the instructions, and I always recommend it on anything mechanical, medium strength Loctite. So with that, that's all the tools. Let's take a look at the bike. Okay, the first step in our instructions for installing the left-hand side, it does indicate on the instructions you need to start with the left. So the first step is to remove our 2 engine bolts. I've pointed these out to you in some pictures, and I'll try and get these up on the screen here in just a moment. But taking a look at it, first we're going to remove this bolt here, and then we're going to remove this Allen head bolt right over here. We'll start with the Allen just because I'm going to start in the front. Now, as I stated when I was talking about the tools needed, you're going to put your Allen wrench here. And if you're like me, you don't have a nice long Allen wrench to give you some leverage. And this is fairly tight from the factory. So what I've done is I've taken my matching size socket, so 10 millimeter Allen, 10 millimeter socket, a nice extension. I put that on, and now I have a wrench. Now, I have already broken this bolt loose just because I'm going through and making sure of these steps before I show you. I don't want to show you guys wrong. But once you've done that, you can just break the bolt loose. And then once it's loose, you can continue to back it out all the way with your fingers. This one's not too long. I had it out just a minute ago. For those of you that have never seen an install video, I promise you most install videos are done at least twice. So I'm no stranger to it, but I don't want to show you the wrong way. So we pull that bolt out. There is a washer in there with it, so you want to make sure it comes out with it as well. There is that bolt. Now we're going to move on to the back bolt. This is our larger bolt and longer bolt. It is the 14 millimeter that's way up underneath there. So we're going to put our socket wrench on that with an extension. And again, our appropriately sized ratchet, and we'll break that one loose. This one does take a little bit more work. Again, I've already done it. But one thing to note, on the back of this bolt is a nut, and it's on the other side of the motorcycle. Once it breaks loose, it probably will spin freely, and you'll need another set of hands Or if you carefully reach over your motorcycle, you can actually reach both sides, and that's what I've done. So just to show you, the nut is already out. Here's the nut in my hand. So actually I don't need that because again, I'm just showing you guys how this works. There's the through bolt. So those come off the bike and that Allen comes off the bike. And that is the first step. All right, for step 2 of installing our brackets, we are going to first disconnect the bracket piece and the 2 thumb screws, there's those there, from the main tip over protection, okay? And this one indicates that you are going to use the 12 millimeter by 80 bolt and the spacer. That's the big spacer, the one that is 15 millimeters diameter. So this is gonna go here. The spacer is gonna go in place where that washer was. The bolt's gonna go through, but it's also going to go through this bracket. Now, what gets a little bit confusing, I found, is it says to insert it and it goes behind the fairing. It's pretty tight, but I didn't want to take the fairing off, obviously. So I've taken off the reflective panel that was here. That's an easy one. If you don't know how to do that, I cover it very in depth when you do if you take a look at my video about the reflective decals. But there's a thumb screw here, and then you push the whole thing up, and it only is going to slide maybe a 1/4 inch, and the whole thing comes off very easily. So let's put this in. We're going to insert it here, and with this off, I've got plenty of room for my fingers up here now. And we're going to bring the bracket down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the spacer first so it fills the hole. Then I'm going to come all the way down, and this bracket is just barely going to show. You're going to go through the second hole, not the threaded hole, but the second hole. Put that in and lightly get it started. Now, I'm going to go back to my Allen wrench. This one is that 14 millimeter Allen wrench, or excuse me, 10 millimeter Allen wrench again. And we're going to bring that in nice and tight. And I just want to snug it, but I want it enough that the bracket's not going to tip over on me because I'm going to have to get to that thumb screw here in just a few minutes. So we're going to bring that in. Again, nothing's on with Loctite. It's not done like that on purpose because remember, I'm going to use Loctite to tighten everything down. I'm just fitting the first time. So that's snug, that's in place, and I can access the bracket right here. And it even says in the instructions, just finger tight right now, okay? Then we're going to do the left engine guard attachment to the bracket. And this is going to use those 2 thumb screws we took off. It's calling them the, let's see, what does it say there? The 12 by 1 1/4, looks like bolts or nuts that are going to go on here. So this is going to go right on here. What's going to happen is that's going to go through there. Our bottom hole is going to line up with the bottom bracket, and the top hole is going to line up with the top of the bracket. Now, these are both 8 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in place and make sure it fits. And then I've got my 8 millimeter. I do have one of these nice and long. And I'm just going to start the threads because, again, I just am making sure everything lines up just right. So that one started. And now I got to get the bottom one started over here. And this is just not going in my favor. So let me work on this and I'll be right back. Okay, for step 3, we've got the bracket in place. You can see it here, okay? Again, just finger tight. We haven't locked anything down with Loctite or anything like that yet. We will do that. And we've got both bolts removed. So step 3, and it says that you are going to now put the engine guard on and tighten the 2 manufacturer's bolts that they gave us. So I found a couple of tips with this. Number 1 is they mention using the stainless steel rod to help hold it in place, okay? This is the rod they give you that's going to go all the way through in place of this long bolt here. The rod came pre-threaded in my case with a lock nut and a washer, and then it came with an additional washer and spacer and the nut for the other side. In reading the instructions, it doesn't tell you this on this side of the motorcycle, but on the other side, it tells you to use the spacer. So on this side, all we're going to do is leave the washer. So I've got the pre-threaded nut and just the washer. Now, what I'm going to do, it helps to hold the whole thing in place if we kind of start this into the hole. It's nice and long, so you don't even have to go all the way in yet. Just start it like right there. It gives you another handhold, okay? Now, we've got those two small threaded screws. What I do is I'm gonna come in here on the bottom one first, and I'm gonna line it up with the hole and move the bracket accordingly. That's gonna allow me to have the most room to get in here with my fingers and get this one started. The reason for doing the bottom one first is because the bottom one really doesn't clear for my Allen wrench. There's not really room to get in there. I'm gonna have to use a shortened wrench of some sort, and we'll modify that in a minute and figure out how we're gonna do it. Now, with the bottom on and the stainless steel rod pushed most of the way in, and if it doesn't go all the way, you can just jiggle it a little, it'll go the rest of the way in. So that's all the way in as my second hand. Now I can take this top one, and in moving the bracket, I can push it to right where it goes, hold that with one hand, and use the other hand and my Allen wrench to get this one started. And that will allow all three bolts to tighten up, okay? So now we're gonna get this one down to just again, a finger tight, just kind of a snug, nothing major, and just there. And I'll pull my Allen out, it's a little bit tight there. This guy is the other one that doesn't really get a good location for an Allen wrench. We're gonna modify that to mess in the morning in a minute, and the bolt is all the way through. So now the left side is in place. Again, nothing is tight, but it's in place, okay? From here, we go to the right side. Okay, if you're following along with the instructions from T-Rex, we're now on step 7. We've moved over to the right side. We're gonna remove this front engine bolt. I've already broken it loose, but again, I've got my large Allen wrench that fits in these. Then I've got my matching size socket to go right on there and make it form as my cheater. I've already broken it loose, but as you can see, we're just gonna take it all the way around and pull this bolt all the way out, okay? If you didn't notice in the pictures, I also removed the wind fairing, just like on the other side. If you're not familiar with how to do that, check out my video for applying the reflective decals. And I've got a real good clip in there. I believe it's in part 1 of that video on how to do that. So there's our bolt that we've removed. We'll put it out of the way for the moment. Now, step 8, and what this is telling us is to install that right-hand bracket. So again, we've gone back to the bracket that's from the bars. We're gonna use the 4mm spacer on this one. This is the smaller spacer, and that's this guy with this little spacer right here. You can see it's much thinner. It's gonna go right in that hole, and this bolt is gonna replace the one we just took out. So, once again, we're gonna take our bar, and I'm gonna drop it in behind the fairing up here, just because it makes it a little bit easier to let gravity be on my side. And I'll let that come down. Bring my fingers down with it. And now I can see it. So there's my hole. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold it out of the way, put my spacer in, slide the bracket into place, and just lightly hold it there while I put the bolt in. That bolt's gonna go all the way in. And just like the other side, we're only going finger tight here. We're not gonna go snug or anything like that. So put our Allen wrench in and take this one all the way down. These are nice and long bolts, so you just gotta be patient. I would not recommend using power tools on this, only because if you over torque something, I mean, you are messing with the engine bolts and stuff. You could really mess things up. So if you want to use power tools, I guess you could if you have this size in your tools, but personally, I wouldn't use power tools on this. So, and again, we're gonna come back with the Loctite, don't forget, next time around here in just a minute. But right now we're just getting it in place and down to snug. This bolt is actually a lot tighter in the hole than the other one was, just as itself. So we get that one down to where it's just snug. And we are gonna take it out again and retorque everything just to make sure it fits. So next step is attach the 7mm spacer to the stainless steel bar. So now we're gonna take that spacer from the other side, this 7mm, we're gonna put it on the stainless steel bar, which is right over here. Then we're gonna install the right side engine guard. So we've got our guard, and just like before, I'm gonna put it right on the stainless steel bar just to give me a second hand. Now, I'm also going to put the washer and the nut on there very loosely, just so it doesn't fall off. This one is a lock nut, so you don't want to mess that up, but there you go. That gives me another hand. Just like before, again, also, I'm going to do the bottom bolt first. So I've got my bolt. I'm going to go through, line up with the hole, and just get it started. Okay, that one started. Now the front one, and this will allow us to move the bar around. We can kind of move things and kick it around as we need to get that top hole lined up. And my fingers just aren't fitting in there right now. But there you can see, that's gonna go right on there. Oops, it fell. Give me a second, I gotta scoot in just a little so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so that's going there. There it is, right there. And that one is gonna go right in that hole. I can just feel it start, just like before, and then just like the other side, I'm gonna use my long tool just to get it. I can't tighten with this tool because it's not straight, but I can use it to at least get a start. Maybe. Okay, so that one is now finger tight as well. So that's finger tight. I've got the stainless steel bar down just to where it's snug, and everything is good there. So I want to move the camera here just a minute. I'm going to show you why I cut down this small Allen wrench, and then I'm going to go around and tighten everything up. I'm not going to do that on camera, but let me show you why this is cut down. Just a second. Okay, just showing you, I've got the camera in hand now so I can kind of move it around. Still on the right side of the motorcycle, but these are those two thumb screws we were talking about. There's one right here, and then there's another one down here. And there's not room to go in a straight line. You'll actually hit the bar. So with this cut down wrench, what it allows me to do, if I put the camera right there, you can kind of see, is I can come in right behind the bar. I can get that into the Allen, and then I can use it to tighten. So the instructions say to give it 30 foot-pounds of torque. I'm gonna kind of have to estimate that. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do once I put Loctite on, but that's why I cut down the Allen wrench. It fits right in there. And again, on the top one, if I show you, let me see where I can get a picture. There's the bolt. So again, the Allen wrench fits right in there. And once it's in the socket, you can see it clears the bar without hitting anything. Okay, so that's why I've got. I'm gonna go around and tighten all the bolts. Don't forget to use the medium strength Loctite on everything you do. That will help you out in the long run with making sure it stays on for the longevity. So I'll be back with you in just a few minutes after I get everything tightened up, and then we'll get to the rear ones, okay? So I'll be right back, and I'll show you pictures as well once the front is done. All right, so the front side are installed, both tip overs, and I'll show you this. I'm on the right side of the motorcycle right now, as you can see. Nice and firm, I do love it. Couple of notes, things I've learned toward the end of this as I show you for the fronts, and then we'll move on to the rear in another video. But as you're tightening these three bolts, you got the one upper here, one lower down here, and then the engine bolt. What I did is I actually did the engine bolt first with all the others finger tight, because that allows you to move this around just a little bit. You will need to make sure it's down as far as possible to get your fairing back in. I did have a little bit of difficulty with that, but I was able to get it back in. It is fastened in as normal, and it will come out, but this right side is much tighter than the other side. So don't forget medium Loctite on all three of those bolts. And then over on this side in the back, you can see right there in the frame, that's the engine bolt threaded down, and that one is a lock nut, so no Loctite on that. So I'll stand up real quick, show you how it looks a little bit from a distance. There's the left side of the motorcycle. And again, make sure you put your fairing back in before you tighten everything down. That way you make sure you have clearance and everything looks good. And there's the right side of the motorcycle. Next, we'll move on to the back. I will do the back braces in another video. Thank you for watching. If you're looking for just how to do these front cages, they are awesome. Again, these are from T-Rex Racing. I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but I do really appreciate their information. Their customer service has been excellent when I've needed to follow up or ask them questions. So my name is Brian. Thanks for joining me in the shop. If you want to see the rear ones get installed or the front axle slider, stick around, check out my other videos on my YouTube channel under motorcycle, and we will get some information to you that way. Otherwise, have a good one, ride safe, and remember, A.T.G.A.T.T, all the gear, all the time. God bless everybody.